Hi everyone, I'm the Linen Girl and I'm so excited to finally introduce you to my brand new sewing patterns. If you love size-inclusive sewing patterns with multiple variations in one design, plus easy guides to customize for your cup size and height, then our sewing pattern brand is made just for you. So please support our small business by liking, subscribing, and turning on the notification bell. It's designed to be customizable to your cup size and height, giving you that perfect tailored fit. No more struggling with patterns that don't match your shape. Before you sew, preparation is key. The video tutorial may show my professional seamstress skipping pinning, but we strongly recommend you pinning and aligning all notches before sewing. Section A. Sewing the top bodice. Before starting, the bodice pattern needs adjustment to remove the placket. Step 1. Assemble the bodice. Carefully cut all bodice fabric pieces, paying close attention to the notches. We strongly recommend pinning and aligning all notches before sewing. My professional seamstress also marks the midpoint of the front bodice when it's folded in half. You can mark using a small snip with your scissors or a fabric pen. With right sides together, sew the bodice panels together. Make sure all the notches are matched together before and during sewing. Pin these points if needed to keep them aligned. Leave the left side seam unstitched for the zipper. For the bodice with a front placket, you can sew both side seams. Then, press all seam allowances as towards the back. Make sure to use a tailor's ham, especially around the bust area, to avoid flattening the bust while ironing. Next, align and sew the shoulder seams. Step 2. Narrow hem technique. On the wrong side of the fabric, fold the raw edge inward by 0.5 centimeters, 3/16 of an inch edge stitch about 0.2 centimeters, 1/16 inch from the folded edge. Be careful not to stretch the hem. Fold it up gently, allowing the fabric to curl naturally without pulling it off grain. Then fold it up again by another 0.5 centimeters, 3/16 of an inch. For the final stitch, sew the hem in place, stitching close to the inner folded edge, right on top the first line of stitching. Sometimes at the curve, you may notice the fabric bunching up. Instead of pulling and stretching it out, my seamstress simply lets it bunch up and gently sews it down. Do not pull it off the grain. Step 3. Inserting the inverted zipper. A zipper opening is installed from one armhole down. This method places the zipper in an inverted orientation with full opening at the bottom for easier dressing. The initial attempt to install the zipper failed, which is why the armhole binding appears complete in pictures and videos. However, the bias binding should be done after the zipper installation. Mark the zipper placement. Measure and mark a point 4 centimeters down from the raw armhole edge. This is the upper stopping point for the zipper. Sew the side seam from the top down to this point. Next, determine the required zipper length by measuring the side seam from the hem up to the top. Trim the zipper to match this length. Finish the end of the zipper with a zigzag stitch to prevent the zip from sliding off the teeth. Place the invisible zipper right sides together with the side seam. Align the zipper plastic stopper below the garment's hemline. Using a zipper foot, baste the zipper to the seam allowance, starting from the hem and sewing upward toward the armhole. Stop basting 1 centimeter below the top zipper stopping point. Next, zip the zipper all the way up. Align the other side of the side seam with the zipper tape, right sides together. Make sure the plastic stopper aligns perfectly at the hem. Baste the second zipper tape to the seam allowance. Unzip the zipper halfway and continue sewing. Change to an invisible zipper presser foot. Temporarily zip the zipper down below the upper stopping point so the zipper teeth are free for sewing. Open the zipper. Starting from the hem, sew both sides of the zipper in place. To finish the zipper at the hem edge, open out the hem seam allowance. On the right side of the garment, fold the extra zipper tape down diagonally at the hemline, then fold the hem allowance back over the zipper. Top stitch neither to secure it. Step 4 plus 5. Bias binding the armholes and neckline. Bias tape techniques are explained in more detail in a specialized video. Watch from 0:45 to 7:54 for a step-by-step demonstration of bias taping the sleeveless armhole, and from 13:50 to 15:52 for the boat neckline. Finish the bias binding for the armhole first, then the neckline at the end. The bias binding will cover the end of the zipper around the armhole. Make sure to give your garment a final press at the end for a clean, professional finish. Section B. Sewing the A-line dress. Before starting, make sure you have printed the correct skirt pattern. The bodice pattern also needs adjustment. This variation is a half-line dress, only the skirt is lined. Start by referring to section A for the top. Complete step 1. Assemble the bodice and leave the left side seam open for zipper insertion. The fabric I used wasn't the high-quality linen I had hoped for, so it stretched quite a bit. To fix the loose waistline, I added 2 straps at the side seams to cinch the waist. The original pattern already has a fitted waist, but feel free to add straps like mine if you prefer a more snatched fit. Step 6. Sew the skirt. Carefully transfer all pleat markings from the skirt pattern pieces onto the wrong side of your fabric. To form the pleats, fold the fabric along the marked lines, bringing the outer lines toward the center line to create each pleat. Sew across the top of each pleat using a 0.5 cm seam allowance. Step 7. Sew the invisible inseam pockets. You should have 4 pocket pieces, 2 pairs. Finish the straight edge of each pocket piece using a serger or a zigzag stitch, leaving the curved edge raw. On the skirt side seams, mark the first pocket opening point 9 cm down from the waistline. The second mark is 14 cm below the first. On each pocket piece, measure down from the top straight edge, first mark at 4 cm, second mark 14 cm below that. Attach pockets to the main skirt panels. The pockets are attached to the shell fabric, not the lining. Start with the non-zipper side. Take one front skirt panel, right side up. Place one pocket piece on top, right sides together, aligning the straight raw edge. Sew the pocket piece to the skirt only between the 2 marked points using a 1 cm 3/8 inch seam allowance. Start and stop precisely at the marks. Do not sew the entire edge of the pocket to the skirt. Repeat this process for the remaining 3 pocket pieces. Understitch front skirt pockets. Only understitch the pocket opening. Leave the top and bottom edges of the pocket unstitched. With the pocket bag opened out, Stitch on the right side of the pocket, close to the seam line, about 1 to 2 millimeters away, catching the seam allowance underneath. This helps the pocket roll neatly to the inside. Repeat for the other front skirt pocket. Sew the side seams. Start with the non-zipper side first. Begin at the top waistline and sew down to the first pocket mark using a 1 cm 3/8 inch seam allowance. Skip over the pocket bag area. Continue sewing the side seam from the second pocket mark down to the hemline. Repeat this process for the other side seam, but leave the zipper side seam open from the waistline down to the first pocket mark. Sew the pocket bags. Sew around the curved edge of the pocket bag only, joining the front and back pocket bags together. Keep the main skirt fabric out of the way while sewing. Repeat this process for the other pocket bag. Finish the entire raw edge of the pocket bags using a serger or zigzag stitch. Press the side seams and pocket bags toward the front of the skirt. Step 8. Hemming the skirt. Use the narrow hem technique described in Section A, Step 2. Step 9. Sew the lining skirt. The lining hem should be 1 to 2 centimeters shorter than the main skirt hem. Sew lining pleats. Repeat Step 6 for the lining pieces. Sew the side seams of the lining using a 1 centimeter seam allowance. On the side seam designated for the zipper, leave a 10 centimeter opening from the waistline down. Hem the lining skirt. Use the same method as in Step 8. Again, make sure the lining hem is 1 to 2 centimeters shorter than the main skirt hem. Step 10. Sew the skirt bottom to the bodice place, the skirt on top of the bodice, right sides together. Align the raw waistline edges. Match the side seams of the skirt and bodice, as well as the center front and center back markings. You can find these points by folding each piece in half, aligning the side seams. Align the pleats on the skirt to the corresponding seam lines on the bodice. Pin all matching points securely along the waistline. Sew the waistline using a 1 centimeter 3/8 inch seam allowance. Finish the raw edge of the waistline seam with a serger or zigzag stitch to prevent fraying. Press the finished seam allowance downward toward the skirt. Step 11. Sew the zipper. The armhole binding might appear complete in some photos and videos, but the zipper must be installed before applying the bias binding. Measure and mark a point 4 centimeters down from the raw armhole edge. This is the upper stopping point for the zipper. Sew the side seam from the top down to this point. Basting stitch. Place the invisible zipper right sides together with the bodice side seam. Align the plastic stopper at the top of the zipper with the upper stopping point. Using a zipper foot, baste the zipper to the seam. Stop basting 1 centimeter below the lower stopping point. Mark the waistline on the first side of the zipper using pin or a fabric pen. Zip it all the way up, then use that mark to align the waistline on the second side of the zipper. Baste the second zipper tape to the seam allowance, again stopping 1 centimeter below the lower stopping point. Unzip the zipper halfway and move it out of the way. Then, continue to baste the zipper tape down toward the end. Change to an invisible zipper presser foot. Temporarily zip the zipper all the way down, so the zipper teeth are free for sewing. Sew both sides of the zipper in place along the previously basted lines. Rewind to the timestamp on screen to review how to finish the bias binding around the zipper and neckline. The bias tape will neatly cover the top of the zipper, hiding the raw zipper edge for a clean, professional finish. Half lining instructions. Turn both the dress and the lining to the wrong side. Open the zipper tape. Align the wrong side of the lining to the edge of the zipper tape at the waistline. Fold 1 centimeter, 3/8 inch, seam allowance at the top before sewing. Stitch a straight line to attach the lining to the zipper tape. Stop when you reach the zipper slider. Repeat the same steps on the other side. Now turn the lining to the right side and wrap it around the dress. Here's what it should look like after you've attached the lining to the zipper. Place your hand under the lining. Use your finger to hold the seam allowance, then turn the seam right side out. You should now see the seam allowance from the wrong side. Starting as close to the corner as possible, sew the lining all the way around the bodice. Sew directly on the same seam line that joins the skirt and the bodice. Make sure all pleats are aligned with the bodice seams and that the side seams match. Make sure to give your garment a final press at the end for a clean, professional finish. Section C, dropped waist dress with front placket. Before starting, make sure you've printed the correct pattern pieces. Step 14, sewing the bodice with shell and lining. Assemble the main fabric, shell, bodice pieces, and the lining bodice pieces separately, following the instructions in step 1. Keep the shell and lining separate for now. Step 15, prepare the interfacing and press onto plackets. Cut interfacing pieces to match the placket area. Each piece should be 6 centimeters wide and equal in length to the full placket section on your main bodice. Apply the interfacing. Fuse the interfacing to the wrong side of the main fabric where the placket will be sewn. Use the appropriate iron temperature for your fabric and a press cloth if needed to avoid scorching. Press firmly, hold the iron in place for about 30 seconds per section, then lift and move to the next area. Avoid sliding the iron. Step 16. Sew the placket and lining together. On the shell, main fabric, fold the placket inwards exactly 3.5 centimeters, 1 3/8 inches, from the outer edge along the fold line. Press the fold sharply to create a clean, crisp edge. Pro tip: a professional seamstress used a DIY pressing guide made from cardstock. She drew a 3.5 centimeter line from the edge and aligned the fabric fold to that line before pressing. This ensures consistency and straight folds with minimal guesswork. On the lining, trim the placket area. Measure and trim the lining placket edge to 5 centimeters from the outer edge. Step 17. Sew the lining to the shell at the placket. Align the bodice layers. Place the lining bodice right sides together with the shell bodice. Sew along the placket edge to join the lining to the shell. Use a 1 centimeter 3/8 inch seam allowance. Step 18. Sew the lining to the shell at the neckline. Make sure the shell and lining are right sides together. Fold the fabric along the placket folding line, with shoulder seams matching. Align the raw neckline edges of the shell and lining, matching the shoulder seams, center front, and center back markings. Pin if necessary. Sew around the neckline. Push the fabric forward gently while sewing, instead of stretching it. Trim the neckline seam allowance down to 0.5 centimeters or 3/16 of an inch. Snip the curves. Understitch, turn the bodice right side out. Put your thumb into the corner and pull the seam allowance toward the lining side. Then, use your index finger to push through the corner to shape a sharp, clean point. On the right side of the lining, stitch as close into the corners as you can. Stitch very close to the neckline seam, catching the seam allowance underneath. This helps the neckline roll cleanly to the inside and prevents the lining from showing. Carefully press the neckline edge, making sure the seam line rolls slightly to the inside. Step 19. Top stitch the placket. From the wrong side of the garment, stitch in the ditch. Sew directly into the seam line where the placket lining joins the main fabric bodice. Step 20. Sew the armholes. Option 1. The burrito method. Start by tucking the bodice and lining seams inward at the shoulder. Reach your hand underneath, grab the seam, and gently turn it. Now, join the shoulder seams of the main fabric and the lining together. Push all the excess fabric inside. This method can feel a bit tricky, but that's actually a good sign. You're probably doing it right. If it feels too easy, you might be doing it wrong. Align the shoulder seams and sew the seam using a 1 centimeter or 3/8 inch seam allowance. Make sure the underarm seams are aligned while sewing. Pin them in place if needed. Carefully sew all around the armholes. Trim and snip. Trim the seam allowance down to 0.5 centimeters or 3/16 of an inch. Snip small notches into the curve of the seam allowance, cutting toward the stitch line but not through it. Understitch. Press the seam allowance toward the lining. Reach inside the bodice through the bottom. On the right side of the lining, understitch close to the armhole seam, about 1 to 2 millimeters away, catching the seam allowance underneath. Stitch as far as you can comfortably reach. This helps keep the lining tucked neatly inside. Option 2. Bias tape finish. First, sew the shell fabric and the lining together all around the armholes using a 0.5 centimeter seam allowance. Clip the seam allowance along the curve to create ease. This will help the armhole lie flat. Now, the armhole behaves as one single layer, making it easier to finish. Use the bias tape method described in Step 4. This method is beginner-friendly and gives a clean, professional finish. Step 21. Sew the bottom skirt of the dropped waist dress. Prep the bodice pieces. Baste the shell and lining of the bodice together at the hemline using a 0.5 cm seam allowance. Make sure all seam lines and side seams are aligned properly as you sew. Once basting is complete, overlap the placket, with the left side of the garment overlapping the right side. Sew the side seams of the shell skirt with right sides together. Finish the seams using a serger or a zigzag stitch and press them flat. We didn't have enough fabric, so the back panel is made by joining two pieces sewn together. Repeat the same steps for the lining skirt. Hem both the shell and lining skirts. Trim the lining so it's about 1 to 2 centimeters, or roughly half an inch, shorter than the shell. Fold the hem twice, each fold 0.5 centimeters, about 3/16 inch, and sew as close as possible to the inner folded edge. Gather the skirt top edge. Start by finding the center front and center back points on the skirt pieces, both shell and lining, and on the bodice, where the skirt will be attached. These reference points will help you align the skirt evenly to the bodice when sewing. Use one of these two gathering methods. 1. 2 lines of basting stitches. Sew 2 parallel lines of long machine basting stitches along the top edge of the skirt, one at about 0.5 centimeters and the other at 0.8 centimeters from the raw edge. Leave long thread tails and avoid backstitching. 2. Zigzag over cord. Lay a strong thread or yarn along the seam line. Use a zigzag stitch to sew over the cord, then gently pull the cord to gather the fabric evenly and easily. Attach shell skirt to bodice place. The shell skirt and the bodice right sides together. Align the center front, center back, and side seams. Pin in place, then sew the seam using a 1 cm 3/8 inch seam allowance. Attach lining skirt to bodice. Turn the garment wrong side out. Push the shell skirt out of the way of the skirt seam allowance. Align the top of the lining skirt to the wrong side of the bodice. Match center front, center back, and side seams. Pin and sew this seam using a 1 cm seam allowance. This seam will overlap the shell skirt seam line. Finish the raw edge with a serger or zigzag stitch. Press the seam allowance down toward the hem. Final press. Give the entire garment a final, thorough press. Be careful not to press directly on the gathers. Avoid flattening them completely. And there we have it. If you found this tutorial helpful, please give it a thumbs up. And don't forget to subscribe. I also have a sewing tutorial playlist called Pro Seamstress Guide, where I'm slowly adding professional tips and techniques from my expert seamstress. I really hope you enjoyed sewing along and creating your own garment. And I'll see you in the next video.